Hello, everyone. Welcome to our fifth episode. So the fifth episode of our Fintech Garden podcast. My name is Dumitru Condrea, and here together with me is my co-host, Igor Tomic. Hello, Igor.
Hello, Dumitru. Thank you for joining for today's episodes. And I think everyone will listen this episode after the holidays in the year, but we are recording it before. And we made the decision to talk about the previous year, and you're listening to a new one, but I think it's good to reflect and think and discuss a little bit what has been happening all the year and the news and the stuff and the trends. So today we will jump into this topic and we will discuss it.
Yeah. So today's topic is official name of our episode is Fintech 2024. A year in review. So today we'll speak a lot about what happened in 2024. Maybe a little bit we'll touch what will happen in 2025. But yeah, let's see. What do you think? What was the most I don't know, top 2 or top 3 events in fintech world in 2024?
If we're talking about events, maybe we need to define like what is the category or what is the definition of the event, because a lot of things has been happening and from different angles, and taking into account that the context was challenging because we are still facing macroeconomic challenges. We are still facing stability challenges in the world. And let maybe start from smaller parts, like what has been happening. And for me, as Igor Tomic, as a person working in fintech, what was challenging and what were the events for myself. And then we can go into more generic and business themes. So for me personally, it was pretty interesting year and different from the previous one, because I've combined several hats as a person. I was working with the buy now, pay later platform Twister as CTO, but also running my own company as a CEO. And it's kind of a new skill, and especially if both companies are in fintech. And I had a really great opportunity to come into the company and do the change management, rebuild the team, rebuild business processes to drive more changes and more results for the company. And that, I would say, from my personal level, was the biggest achievement and the biggest challenge in the year. And then a lot of different things like were happening. And other events or changes for me, it's participating in DORA certification, releasing the specific technical functionality, talking with vendors, etc., etc. But from your perspective, I think it's personal growth and personal challenges. What about you, Dumitru?
Well, for me, this year was, I will be honest, it was a tough year for me. It was a year where a lot of things changed. The year when I honestly took some very good lessons, lessons that will, for sure, will help me in future. Beside this, the year is ending with great opportunities and challenges I'm having in front of me, with absolutely great projects, with meeting absolutely great people. And this year was a year when I discovered some new opportunities. I discovered new markets and very, very absolutely unique and interesting projects. This year I can call a year that gave me a lot of lessons, specifically for my background, for my development and knowledge base. Because if 2023 was more a year of consolidation of everything I had and consolidation of the knowledges and sharing the knowledges, coming to interesting new projects, just help them to get out from some situations they had. This year, I was challenged to do the same, but in total new markets and new fields, and I was in a situation to learn super quickly. I'll be also very honest with you when I'll tell you that it's very important to have very good connections and very good friends who will help you friends that can pick up the phone when you have when you need help and advices. I mean, professional advices, because we are human beings. We cannot know. We don't have the opportunity and possibility to know everything what is in this world. And I have very good friends around who helped me, who gave me advices, very good professional advices for very specific cases where, like, I'm not sure that even maybe 1% of people who are working in fintech are meeting with, so are facing with. So it's absolutely was a unique thing. But 2024, I can sum up with several words. It was challenging. It was a very deep learning year, a year where I consolidated my friendship with some very, very good people, and a year that at the end started for me some absolutely unique and interesting opportunities.
Okay,
Yeah.
sounds pretty cool. Thank you for sharing. And I think we can slowly go into the discussing the markets and the news or what has been happening. So do you have anything that you would like to highlight as, I don't know, items that particularly interesting for our listeners, what has been happening in the fintech world?
Well, 2024 is the year where embedded finance is at scale. So embedded finance is more and more omnipresent everywhere we are going. I mean, surfing online, for example, but even in the real world, I mean, with physical products and physical goods, embedded finance started to be in touch with. Embedded finance, this will be the trend also for 2025, by sure. Banking as a service is also growing. This niche is also growing, and it's attracting more and more investments, attracting more and more customers. I think that it not will be like with people who, so like in social medias where everybody can create their own personal brand. It will not have the same situation here where each of us will have will own a personal bank via using some BaaS services. But I think we are in some next years, like 4, 5, 6 years, we will have a lot of banking services that will run under the license of BaaS providers. By the way, it was a tough year for German fintech, but also a year with good news for German fintech. For example, N26. I know that still Solaris is waiting for the same decision that N26 received. Keep finger crossed for Solaris. And this year also was a very, very interesting year because artificial intelligence was more embedded in fintech. It was more embedded in developing of fintech products, starting with simple Copilot product and ending with full scale AI that was used in chatbots and in customer support. Also, I observed that maybe this is only my personal opinion, but I observed that a big trend of digital wallet ecosystems, a big trend of developing of digital wallets ecosystems. I mean, a huge amount of apps appeared. I'm to be honest, I started to be a little bit lost in all these products. The market is already full or close to be full, but somehow this digital wallets thing is just exploding. Some central banks made some interesting steps in blockchains. Blockchain technology, for example, some of the banks built some strong regulations regarding blockchain. Some of the central banks accepted blockchain in their ecosystem, and what we are still till today we are struggling with is cross-border payments. So we also have some innovations on cross-border payments. So from one side, for cross-border payments, innovations, regulations are a blocker, but at the same time gives a possibility to control everything what's happening. But I observe that started to appear a lot of solutions, legal solutions, regulated solutions for facilitating a more faster cross-border payments. And the last, but not the least, the most important thing, PSD3 is coming. So we have to embrace ourselves, because 2025 will be the year when PSD3 will be fully launched, fully published. Sorry. Already you can find a lot of proposals, a lot of drafts of PSD3. So PSD3 will change the finance world next year and for the next 10 years by sure. So this is the most important thing. So 2024 is the beginning of PSD3.
Okay. It's a pretty cool topic. We will extend the topic maybe a little bit later. But just to make sure for our listeners, when we're talking about N26, we mean that they acquired the full retail license. Is it correct?
Not only. BaFin announced that that N26 is not under supervision anymore. It was announced, I think, in August or September, something like this. So this is a very good news for them, because now BaFin, I mean, they can do everything they think they want to do. I mean, regulate in accordance with regulations and laws, but they are now free to onboard customers to do. I mean, classical business. They are free to develop their own business strategy.
And by
this
BaFin,
is what I'm talking about.
We mean the German regulator, just to give a proper visibility for our customers. Just to sum up, there is a startup bank which is called N26, and it was one of the first digital banks in Germany. And they were operating, if I'm not mistaken, initially by MEI license, then applied for a full retail banking license, and they got it. But they were supervised by the regulator, because it's like, I don't know, small children wheels on the bicycle. Like, you can go, but there is some kind of support from the third parties, which is kind of limiting for the business model, because you are kind of limited with the numbers of customers that you can onboard. You're limited with the business model services. And that's a good moment for them, because the regulator made them run free, okay, with the framework and boundaries which are set by the legal part, but they open to the market as a big grown-up banks over there. So it's good news. And what Dmitry is referencing to, that Solaris Bank is potentially waiting for the same event to happen. So that's one thing. The second one, to sum up, blockchain has been making certain progress with the central banks, because innovations are unstoppable, and central banks are thinking how this can be applied to real world with the asset management, with the digital currencies. One of the things that I can say personally, like in the beginning of 2024, Central Bank of England was looking to have the digital wallet implementation, and digital currencies, one of the trend. Everyone is trying to find the proper way how it can be made its way to the market and to the mass market usage. So a lot of things are happening in this area. And in this case, AI is also the trend. So thank you for sharing. If you would ask my list, go ahead.
Yeah, I try to be super polite, not interrupt you, to say like, Igor, what's your list? So what do you think, by the way, I started with this question. So what do you think was 24 for FinTech world? How it was?
It was a moment where you have to innovate with the limited budget. And I would say the most cool things are created between two bad and bad states. Because if you take a look on the VC market and the amount of money which is poured into the market compared to the previous years, it's definitely small. Like, no one is putting money into the pre-seed. You cannot just come up with the idea, oh, let me open a digital bank, and then no one will give money for that. It will be even further if you have a product, but you don't have the customer base, or you don't have a proven business model. It still will be really hard to get money. And I think in this market, certain players have to innovate, because there is not much space to get new money. And it's harder to come to this market, which means their business model will be much more thought through, and they're going to be much more fruitful when the market will switch from too bad into the just bad state. So then when it's good, everything will be fruitful, everything will flourish, but we need to reach this state. So I think it's a good moment for the market to innovate despite of the overall limitation of the resources. And I can highlight certain things which can be examples of that. Before even recording this podcast with Dumitru, we discussed the case of the Kaspi Bank from Kazakhstan. For me, it's an interesting story because of several parameters. First of all, sometimes clients or even players in the market, they assume that there is no space to innovate if you have a deep market with the average check and good customers. And that's the case when the Kazakhstan e-commerce combined two things, like e-commerce platform with the banking license, given an ability to operate some kind of buy now, pay later platform. And then it grew into really large business, which gave the footprint into Ukraine, other countries of the post-Soviet era. And this year, in 2024, if I'm not mistaken, January, they went to IPO on Nasdaq, and the total valuation was $18 billion, which is really good for the company, which is not coming from the countries that you would expect will do the innovations in Fintech. And it gives a really good, nice message that you can always find the business model that it works and have a needed level of the depth market to be effective there, to be efficient, even if you're coming from Kazakhstan. Not just the Borat is taken from this country.
By the way, I think Borat was shot in Romania, not in Kazakhstan.
But the idea that the guy is from Kazakhstan, so that's one of the reasons to mention it. Okay. And what do you think else? Like what we can?
No, for me, I mean, the case of Kaspi Bank from Kazakhstan is absolutely promising thing. It's one of the signals that companies that are coming from Eastern Europe or from post-Soviet Union bloc, those companies can have successes. And not only, cases with, guys from Eastern Europe, very talented guys, open companies in United Kingdom or in Western Europe or in the United States and develop those companies there as legal entities present on that regions and arrive to an IPO. But companies that were created in Eastern Europe or post-Soviet Union bloc, developed in that region, with entity established only in that region, because Kaspi Bank is being regulated, they're present mostly in Kazakhstan, and to receive an IPO. This is absolutely good signal for everyone in the region that if you're working hard, if you develop your product very well, you're a strong player in the market, you can achieve everything. It's a signal for stability of our region, and it's a very good news, absolutely great news. I'm very happy for the guys from Kaspi Bank that they achieved this. I'm sure they had a huge party celebrating this.
Okay, that's definitely it. Another news that I would like to share is a NuBank reaching 100 million customers. That's a bank from Latam, Brazil. And I think it's another part of the globe which we don't have a lot of focus on. Once again, like if you take a look on the big players or the markets that usually are discussed, it's not Latam region, but a lot of innovations happening there and a huge, really huge customer ability existing there, like customer base and ability to innovate and ability to serve the people who are sometimes underserved. And that's proven by NuBank. I think it's really great milestone for the business that a new player can come quite quickly to the market and have a lot of customers in this region by accumulating and by facilitating or leveraging the technology to grow really fast compared to other established players there.
1 billion of users. I mean, just imagine what kind of a database you have to have somewhere. I mean, you have to store all this data, and this is absolutely a success. I wish that we in Europe also will have such companies that will onboard 1 billion users. Also, I think it's a first, it's a first song from a big opera. What we have in front of us, opera of joining a big number of people into one or two free fintech products, big fintech products or banking products. We need to learn how to work with high load when you have 1 billion users.
Just to make sure, in this case, I was supposed to say 100 million. I'm not sure if I said it correctly. So they have 10 times less. So they have
10 times less. Anyways,
okay. But still a big number.
100 million. It's a big number. I mean, I imagine the face of a CTO of a bank, like, Jesus, what I have to do with a high load, you know?
But it sounds like a Tencent issue. If you imagine Tencent and providing, I don't know, WePay or what is another payment gateway there, like another payment gateway. And since it's super apps, I think it's even much more complex because you have a huge customer base, but you have a lot of integrations because all the services interconnected. But yeah, it's challenging. But I'm usually splitting the complicated and complex. Like in this case, it's complicated enough. Like there are tools out there. There is technology. There is, I don't know, ability to virtualize certain things, to scale, to leverage an ability of the cloud platforms, to build own on-premises, to build own data centers. And I think certain stuff like that is working. Maybe another good example, I'm not sure if this year we faced outages, but I remember having outages on AWS services. And by having those outages with AWS, we saw the performance degradation for, in the first place, if you think about that, not connected service like Apple, because everything is utilizing cloud, and then Apple is hosting certain part of this platform. So I think if you go into 100 million customers, anyway, there are tools which are existing there, and you might be leveraging them or building new one. Once again, it really depends on your investment strategy. Like, are you a truly tech company who is innovating with the scale, or you're leveraging the technology which is out there and then relying on the partners for doing that?
Yeah, like airports, most of European airports in mid of August this year when Windows made a huge update, and I was one of the luckiest guys to lose the plane in that day. And thank you, Microsoft, for this. Anyways, 2024 also was a year when some interesting new projects appeared. A lot of companies that are coming from someone will call them emergent markets, but I'm not agree with them. So I personally see that a lot of companies from regions like Ukraine or Turkey are in fintech are coming on the European market and on Western market specifically also. And they are bringing a huge amount of energy, a huge amount of potential. They want to develop products here in European Union. They want to to increase their profitability, provide new services. By the way, very often in Ukraine or in Turkey, you will see some fintech products that are very popular, widespread, and people are super used with them, that in Western Europe are still on the embryo stage. I mean, they just started only to evolve. So I think that companies that are coming from those regions also will give to European Union, will give a lot of impulse and push in development and in changing somewhere, maybe even the regulations and the legal approaches. So it's absolutely a great start for companies from that regions, also in European Union. And I think 2025, the trend will continue be much bigger, absolutely bigger.
Okay. It triggers interesting, like a question about a digital identity, because what you mentioned, that might be one of the angle to take a look, because from Ukraine, this year we heard about DIA. That's a government application which is providing like super app for the different services. And one part of this service is digital identity. And if you take a look on different markets, like in Czech Republic, there is a bank IT, and that's the reason why I started to think about DIA. If I'm not mistaken, this year it has been introduced to Poland market. Like Ukrainians in Poland can use Poland DIA to have certain services from the country and their digital identity. And another step in this area was introduced by big players like Apple and Google, by supporting digital identities into their wallets. So what do you think? Is it really the year where digital identity becoming normal thing and people are going to use it more?
Yeah, I think that's true. By the way, not only Poland, not only Czech Republic, Moldova also introduced their own version of DIA. I know that Moldovans were working with Ukrainians even before the war of doing something similar. So there were a lot of big projects. Also, another second, by the way, Moldovans and Ukrainians were working on a lot of projects regarding digitalization of personal data and bringing digital identity closer to the public from 2010. It was at the beginning there were quite small steps, but now they're absolutely amazing what's happening in that region. So Moldovans now they have their own some kind of a DIA. It's similar whereby the idea it's similar with some features. They adapted to the realities and needs of their own country, but it's already existed. It's there. The Romania's this year, well, it's not linked to digital identity directly, but they launched a system of instant transfers. The system was launched by the National Bank of Romania. I think the name is Ropleț, or wherever. I don't remember specifically what's the name, but classical old idea, paying via QR code and so on. But they are pushing this very much, and they want to give this QR code thing to be used instead of POS terminals. So they're pushing this very much into the business, into B2B market. So people or companies wherever will use, instead of POS terminals, they can use those virtual terminals with using a QR code. And this is linked to digital identity because you will not be able to make any kind of payment as an individual, any kind of payment if you will not pass the KYC to the bank of where you have your own bank account. And this is also a very, very interesting step to to digital identity. And but everything what's happening, it's a very close step to what I mentioned earlier, to PSD3.
Yeah. Before jumping into that, maybe another thing that I would like to highlight, it's soft pause. I would say that was the first year that everyone started to discuss it. Like before that, on iOS and Android platforms, you have mobile devices. And usually if you go to the shop, you're expecting to have some kind of hardware which is used as payment terminal or point of sale, where you tap to pay or you put your card and then the payment is executed. Through the recent years, we've seen that people are not putting the cards, they just tap in. Like NFC as a technology, near field communication is coming into our world. And we're not just using the cards, we're using our mobile phones, our watches, like wearables, which has NFC enabled. And then we are tapping just as a near device. And then the next step happened. So Apple allowed companies to use their platform as for the soft pause. So right now, as a company, you can actually go to Apple, register an account, develop the application, which allows to do acquiring through your application. And this application will be registered as a device. So as a merchant, you don't need to go to the bank and buy the hardware or lease the hardware for the payment terminals. You can install it right on your device, which once again, it's really interesting because certain underserved areas, certain cases might be proven by doing that. So what do you think about?
I'm sure that Apple, 2024 for Apple in Fintech, in finance, was a very, very strong year. I mean, they started strong. They provided a lot of interesting projects and ideas and insights. I think Apple will be a strong player, financial player, at least in North America in next years. I don't know, unfortunately, I don't have insights in Apple business strategy for Europe, but for North America, I'm sure that they'll be absolutely great player. If to speak about those mobile POS terminals that we have any business can have on their Android or iOS phones, it's interesting to see that sometimes, I mean, you're naturally expecting the tariffs, the intercharging fees, everything will be less for classical hardware POS terminals, but it's not. And so the guys from Ingenico or any other company that are providing are doing the POS terminals, they provide the software, they provide the intercharging. So everything what they are providing is cheaper than using a new type of POS terminals. Often it's cheaper. For example, in Romania, I see that it's grosso modo the same as fees. But for example, those mobile terminals that are not linked to any kind of phone, that's just separate hardware, small thing of hardware, some sub, I think, or something like this is named. They, for example, in their case, some of the fees are much higher than the fees of classical banks, but they provide mobility, they provide the freedom, they provide the fact that you can take this POS terminal and just put in your pocket and just go on. I don't know. For example, you're a restaurant and you want to participate at I don't know, a Christmas market. So you just take everything you have in your restaurant, you go to that Christmas market, you put a tent, you sell that, and you use the same terminal that have a very big life expectancy from the battery and so on. So it's absolutely interesting trend, and it seems like today current customer is not only focused on the fees or to find something cheaper. It seems like today's customers are looking more for convenience, for make your life easier, and for freedom sometimes.
Okay. So that's a good moment to go into the discussion into PSD3. So what do you think, how it will affect the market? Like, what
it totally will affect.
Okay, I agree with that. It will affect, but like in which way? Like, let's have some kind of overview for our listeners. What is the difference? What is the difference from the paper perspective? Because like even with the PSD2, there were certain intentions from the regulator that the bank or the institution who expose any APIs, they will do in the specific way, and there is a reality. There was a difference between expectations and the real world usage. So how does it look on the paper right now?
It looks from one side promising, from another side can be a little bit scary. So we have to mention from the beginning, the final version is not yet published, and as far as I know, it's not yet approved. The final, the super final. What we know by sure is that open banking will go beyond. Well, it means that the logic of open banking will be not applied only for banks or fintech products like digital wallets or whatever, but also in insurance, also in pensions, also in investments. Insurance is a very, very interesting topic and a very sensitive topic. Insurance is still one, in comparison with, for example, with banking services, insurance is still not yet so developed, and there are not so many insurance tech companies that will provide so many services like we see in fintech. And I think that PSD3 will put an accent and will open the gates for invest fintech. Insure tech. I have to get used with this term, because it will provide. I'm sure that companies from Eastern Europe, Western Europe will just fight for new markets, and companies from Western Europe will try to penetrate Eastern European markets, and vice versa. Pensions, the same. Insurance and pensions are mostly run by the same companies. Investments will go cross-border. Investments, they are now cross-border also, but the possibilities will be absolutely amazing. What's scary a little bit is the fact that countries will have a much better data sharing between them. So from one side, the KYC you passed in one country will be available in another country, and it will be accepted, but which is good. But sometimes it can be used, for, I'm sure that guys that are doing money laundering or they'll find here some good, interesting possibilities. So we have to see what is specifically will be written in the paper. But what a little bit also will is carrying the business is that right now nobody understands how will work the KC, because it's by sure it will be totally different, not like it's today. Seems like that it will have a strong the strong customer authentication will be the logic of strong customer authentication will be changed. It will be much. I mean, there's a lot of measures that will combat the cybersecurity threats, and it seems that it's a burden on the business role, on the business, because they will have to invest a lot of money in developing and to be developing features and functionalities that will allow them to be regulated. What here is a trick also. If somebody is telling that PSD3 will give much more possibilities for smaller fintech companies to develop, and will restrict a little bit the big tech, because to avoid any kind of possibilities and situations of a creation of monopolies or multi-monopolies in different markets and regions. So we have to see what will be there. It's not still yet approved, but the biggest idea of PSD3 is, even today, each country have their own national legislation, which sometimes can be different, very different from legislation of another country. Even if all of them are European Union members, PSD2 is applied everywhere. But for example, Romanian logic of Romanian legislation, logic of Polish legislation is different. Polish legislation is much closer to, I will call it much closer to a PSD2 logic than Romanian legislation. Romanian legislation was just a little bit adapted to the PSD2 when Polish legislation was truly changed. PSD3 will cut those gaps. And seems like everywhere in European Union, everywhere the policies for obtaining a specific license will be identical. Not similar, but identical. Here is the difference. We will have to see what will happen, but it honestly will change the business. I think with those guys who are, those guys who are doing in fintech consulting, 2025 will be a big year for making some good money, because they'll have to dig first into PSD3, learn it, and help other companies, provide consultancy and help other companies to cover and close the gap.
Yeah, that's a good one. And another one, which I think everyone is trying to finish in this year, but still it's going to be the unpack. The next one, it's DORA, which is regulatory compliance for all the fintechs out there, which is really the huge topic. So I think it brings us the bridge for the next episode to talk about PSD3
Yes.
and maybe potentially DORA or MiCA. So I think we can put it into the WoW pocket and think through the holidays. We're logically coming to the end. And as usual, I would like maybe to ask you, what is the book that you're bringing to us today? Like what you would recommend to our listeners to read?
Well, if we are closing 2024, so I will recommend a book that was in trends for 2024. It's called Supremacy. The Supremacy. This book was wrote by Parmi Olson. It's a very interesting book because it shows you open a little bit your eyes on how new technologies, OpenAI, the same ChatGPT, changed the business, and it's still changing the business. For example, how ChatGPT or our OpenAI AI tools were used for developing the business. I mean, basically today you can create a business presentations like in 10 minutes, 5 minutes, which is a big impact because it helps you to pitch, make the elevator. So now we will have not only elevator pitch, we'll have elevator presentations, like made in elevator, presented in elevator right now, right here. So yeah, it's absolutely a great book. What do you think? What book you will recommend for
before jumping into the book? I hope I will not see elevator startups because that's a logic that I don't want to exist. Like having the startups created in elevator for presenting certain ideas. But let's see if we will end up there. And before introducing my book, it's definitely it's much older, but I think it's connected to this year because I would say this year was limited with the resources. And in the limited resources, you always need to think how to leverage with the talent, the capital. And the book is pretty nice. It was written in 2000 years, and it's named Funky Business Talent Makes Capital Dance. And it's written by two guys who gave really deep thoughts about how the nature of the business is driven and how the talent is facilitating in the West world and West capital world, because it's pretty invisible link between talent, experience, and the capital. And right now we're facing a little bit maybe different situation, but the capital is dictating the rules to the talent, but also it gives the capital more ability to raise. Like if you have really good idea, if you have really good execution, you still will find money. So it's a nice reading for the holidays to reflect what has been happening this year and how we can leverage our skills and the experience in the next one.
Yeah, absolutely. This book is absolutely interesting book. I'm a huge fan of this book, and I hope that those who had a possibility to read it will take that and as a reading list for at least holidays or for next year.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. I really appreciate everyone listening through our discussion for the last year, even despite being in a new one. And it gives us an ability to think about new topics as PSD, as Dora, or potentially Mika, and to discuss in next episodes. I think let's think for us what the new year will bring to the FinTech Garden. I will start. In this case, I think we have an ability to grow the ecosystem. And the whole idea of being in a garden is to contemplate what is happening around, to not rush, but also care and cherish the flowers and the living beings out there, which I think sometimes startups, there are established companies which are the trees. So it's really good for me to share this experience with you, Dumitru, and with our listeners. And I hope to have more discussions, more fruitful thoughts in our podcast. And thank you, everyone, for joining for this year. And looking forward to be on our podcast and participate in the next year.
This year was a great start for us, for FinTech Garden. I'm happy to be part of this project. Thank you, Igor, for inviting me here. I think if we are in a garden, we have to make a garden party. Means we have to invite some interesting guests that will share their thoughts and their ideas and their vision with us. Maybe 2025 will be the year when we will invite some guests and we will have very interesting and pernicious discussions with them. 2024 was a good start. It's still a good start. 2025 will be, I think, a great success for FinTech Garden, for our project. Thank you very much, Igor, for inviting me here. And when I mentioned at the beginning of podcast that this year showed me that I have very good friends, close. You, Igor, you're one of them, and thank you very much for your support. Thank you very much for your advices. It was a pleasure for me to find you as a friend and as a person to whom I can come with professional questions and find very good answers for very specific cases. 2025 will be a very good year, and I wish to all of you, to you, Igor, to your team, to my team, and to our listeners, happy holidays, and see you in 2025.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.